Thank you for joining. It's hard to believe it's been 5 years since the COVID-19 pandemic hit the US. And so today we're going to take a look back at the surreal experience of those first few weeks and kind of explore how that shaped our lives and finances at the time and how those lessons have carried forward ever since. But before we get to the finance side, let's just take a minute and talk about, the crazy personal experience of that day that we all kind of first learned that the country was shutting down due to this pandemic.
And we as a family actually flew down to Florida. We were in the Palm Beach area for a week during that first time, and it was a little weird flying. But we stayed, and initially we said, "Oh, maybe we'd stay down here for a few more weeks to wait this thing out." That would have been a lot of weeks. So we did make it back. But I remember when we first started, everyone was kind of like, "Oh, we'll shut down, and then we'll all be back," and none of that happened.
Yeah, I was out of the country, and I was with my, at the time, mother and only one of our kids, with the plan for the rest of our family to join us, and having continuous conversations both with Jim and with my wife Jane, to saying things are getting a little iffy here. You might want to think about coming back, and similar to Jim, saying, "Oh, this will pass," and then it really hit us when we got back here and realized just how serious a situation it was.
I was in Spain with my sister when we watched that WHO conference on her cell phone in our apartment in Sevilla, and said, "Well, it sounds like we have to find our way home so we don't get stuck here." By the time I got home, the office was remote.
I was the only one that didn't have a vacation that March. But I do specifically remember before Jim headed down to Florida with his family, he asked me, should I go? And I was like, well, I mean, we can do pretty much everything remotely. And, so it was a little bit of like that kind of hit home and the reality of the situation. But I was also of the mindset that let's just go home, open our windows, and this should all clear in 2 weeks. We'll be good, because that's my, anytime I'm sick, that's, you got to open some windows, get some fresh air, and it'll all be good. But yeah, it was, something that I'll never forget, and just realizing how serious it was over that time frame.
I had the same promise of 2 weeks, and then everything was going to get better. So I was actually transitioning jobs, and I was supposed to be going to the office in early April. And they called me on a Friday and said, "Hey, we're going to actually ship you the laptop and have you start remote. And then we'll see you, in a couple of weeks when this blows over." And a year and a half later, I think I finally stepped into the office and met people. So it was a very interesting transition, and starting a new job with people that we were all going through it together, but I was the new guy and having to figure out what to do. That, and I also had 4 kids trapped in my house as well. So we were getting the updates that schools were shutting down and kids were going to be trying to go to school remotely. And I was like, how is that going to work with 4 kids going to school, me trying to work? This is going to be really interesting.
And on a similar topic, Jim and Lawrence, can you talk a little bit about, as the leaders of the organization, how you handled that transition to all of a sudden running your entire business with everyone remotely and trying to ensure that the client experience stayed the same throughout all of that?
I remember distinctly the biggest initial hurdle was when clients call us, who's going to pick up the phone? And if you think back to that time period, now we take all these technologies for granted, where you can, have Zoom and have virtual, phone systems, and everything is easily transferable to, a remote or in-person environment. That wasn't necessarily the case. We were planning to go to a virtual phone system, and that accelerated what was going to be probably a 3-month process into how can we get this done in about 2 days. But continuously talking together and trying to address each challenge in turn, and I think we did it pretty successfully.
Yeah, I would add to that. I mean, the most important thing is that we wanted our clients to have access to us. So, I think we, in addition to making sure our systems were right, we communicated to them more frequently. We did that on email. We accelerated our access by doing, podcasts and radio shows more frequently, every 2 weeks, sort of to give the general public an update on what was going on in the world of investments in the markets. But the point is that we were able to immediately, to use a word that haven't used since the pandemic, we pivoted and we brought forward the technology to reach us, knowing how much uncertainty there was out there. We wanted our clients to be able to access us and hear what we were thinking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we accelerated our, we typically have an investment committee meeting once a quarter. I think we went from once a quarter to once a month to once a week to daily. Pivot was the word of the day, and being flexible and nimble and dealing with things as they came and trying to, as much as you could, plan in an extraordinarily uncertain environment. Not dissimilar to where we see ourselves today.
Were there any particular sort of lessons or insights or changes that you made during that period that you've still carried through today, and actually served to sort of improve your processes?
Yeah, I would start with, it made us consider the experience we were working with clients as sort of like meeting them where they were. So if they wanted a Zoom meeting, if they wanted, an in-person meeting, they wanted a telephone meeting, we tried to accommodate all of those things. And the in-person meeting actually looked like, for a period of time, outside and with a mask. But nonetheless, what we learned in that period of time is being open and accessible and meeting people where they are. And it's something we've tried to do now. So, every client has an option to meet with us through, some online platform like Zoom or Teams, or in-person meetings if they'd want those, or telephone meetings. And, we've gotten really good at them. We all started it, and remember the first Zoom meetings took 15 minutes because people didn't know where the volume was, and but in all essence, we've all learned those. And for us, a huge differentiator is how clients see our experience, and so we've adapted it. I would say the learning was meet them where they are, no matter what.
Yeah, and I would add that and I think it may be one of the impetuses to one of our core values is this unwavering partnership. We do not, we are there no matter what. This was a crisis at the time. We've been through crises before, but I think if you talk to our clients, they knew we were there. We couldn't control the markets, we couldn't control the world, we couldn't control the pandemic, but they always knew that we were accessible, we were doing our best, we were working very hard on their behalf. And sometimes it would just take a reassuring call to say, we're here, everything's okay. Sometimes it would be a much more in-depth analytical discussion. But at the end of the day, I think, to a person, I think you could ask all of our clients, they could say, we were there the entire time. We were unwavering.
We talked about it. And clients were really scared at that time. A lot of people thought, oh my gosh, am I going to lose all my money? And, the S&P did go down to, I think it was 22 or 2,300 was the bottom. Mm-hmm. So if you think about it being closer to 6,000 today, I mean, that was a pretty significant downturn that had a lot of people worried about their money that they've worked so hard to save. And so a lot of our conversations were about that, and also talking through what the government was doing to help give that aid so that the economy wouldn't collapse completely. So it was something that I worked through, and I think reminding them of their plan and what we've worked on and what we've planned for. And even though there are these tough times where markets can, there can be a huge downturn, it's all in their financial plan. And so that's something that, for me, learning how to have those conversations was really great. And I think, all of the clients, they made it through. They're here today, and their plans are still on track. So that's the most important thing.
I was in a different role at the time when this all came about, but we take a team approach at WHC. I was in still a client-facing role. Crisis, as Lawrence mentioned, we didn't shy away from the communication, and we were calling clients to talk to them about their financial plan and the financial anxiety, but also about how they were doing personally, what they were doing to fill their time, and how were they trying to mentally get through this, which was something we shared. We were all in the same boat when we finally did get home, locked in our house and dealing with wiping down groceries or not, and doing puzzles and whatever was occupying us to get through it together. And another value, sort of as Lawrence mentioned, we're their partners, and the service that we deliver goes beyond the numbers and really gets deep into the relationship with them. And I think the silver lining was learned more about our clients personally and what brings them joy and what ways they found to get through it.
And so for me personally, I felt like it solidified the human touch that Jim was talking to. Like, that relationship side of it really matters, because people wanted things more than ever, but they were still looking to have a trusted advisor to talk to about the solution.
And it comes back to sort of, I mean, you've all talked in different ways about the silver linings and the things that were good that you took away and integrated into your everyday practice after this.
So, I think what it taught our team is that we communicating with clients about their goals and being sure that we were empathetic to their needs beyond just their financial plan, listening intently to what they're doing and remembering small things about them are all part of what we do every day. But it sort of escalated during that time because we were growing as a team. We had new members, and it made us train them in ways that were about listening and delivering beyond just the financial plan or investment strategy. And for most people, that's just, as Jonathan just said, is sort of the human element to what we do. Mm-hmm. So beyond finances is something we'll continue to take forward with us no matter what. Don't get me wrong, we're going to get the financial stuff right, but we see that as an entry to the game. And what makes us different is how we treat people and listen to them and act for them.
Yeah, and I think from an investment standpoint, one of our core philosophical tenets is control what we can control and sort of manage and plan for things that we can't. And I think at a very personal level, that was a lot of what we did. Is you can control your own safety, you can control the relationships that you have, you can control how you respond to different crises. You can't control the pandemic. The pandemic was going to do what it was going to do. So we all knew we couldn't control our situation, but we could control how we responded to it. And I think, I'd just say, our team more than stepped up to demonstrate, just the unwavering, partnership that we deliver, and couldn't have been prouder of the team.
Yeah, and speaking of feeling proud of what you all were able to accomplish together and for your clients during that time, and also kind of touching on what you said, Jim, about there's potentially some feelings or concern about us heading into, or the country heading into, maybe another challenging time now. Can you speak a little bit to how your WHC's process in particular, the Plan Well, Invest Well, Live Well, how that helped to guide your work and your decisions on the financial side?
We were tracking how our portfolio was doing against benchmark. We were watching the economic conditions that were ceasing. And remember, essentially interest rates went to zero overnight. So, money became very inexpensive, and there was a period of time where nothing performed. And then because of economic policy, the Fed made some really good moves during that time. By the end of 2020, markets actually had picked back up, and performed, believe it or not, positively for the full year.
Yeah, I think it in times of uncertainty and particularly times of crisis, people lose sight of, their time horizon shifts from, I'm looking 10, 20 years down the line at some future goal to what does tomorrow look like? What does next week look like? And I think making sure that we were able to maintain that long-term view and perspective. It's easy to think that the world comes to a screeching halt, but if you just sort of look at your own universe and say, well, I'm still, on the internet, I'm still need to buy groceries. I still have goals and aspirations, and my family has needs. The economy can function through, wars, through crises, through pandemics, and being nimble enough. And again, like Jim was saying, looking at the actual data as opposed to just the headlines can help you see through that fog and understand, where opportunities are and where risks are.
And I would imagine that, back then, as well as, now and heading into the future, it's awfully helpful to have sort of a outside impartial partner like yourselves to kind of bring people back to home base and remember the fundamentals. Holly, Lizel, are you having those conversations now with clients?
Yeah, I mean, it's bringing them back to their financial plan. That's always one that we can revisit, and then also economic fundamentals, and reminding them that actually the economy is doing pretty well, all things considered, and unemployment's low, and there's a lot of noise in the headlines, and I think that sometimes can scare clients, and so they just need to be reminded this happens. I mean, we go through economic cycles, and we'll get through this one as well. And
yeah, I think it goes back to what we've all sort of touched on here is that change is inevitable. The focus is really how we react to these variables that we can't control, and how have we positioned ourselves. And so going back to the plan and helping people, you mentioned it, Laura, being this sort of non-biased partner in helping them sift through the noise of the media headlines and focusing on the data.
We have a very solid process and are data driven and really, are quite robust in the way that we approach, what we do for clients. But the way that we worked with each of our clients was very unique. We had some clients pass away. We had clients who had family members pass away during that time period. They're in a very different situation and a very different place than clients who may have a bunch of young kids and are just saying, I want to get back to life as it was. Right. So, taking our tools, resources, process, but bringing that forward in a way that met the client at the place that they were and in their lives and in their situation, is where the sort of the magic happens and where clients can look to us and say, yes, this is not you're not giving me a canned response. You're actually hearing what I'm saying. You know me, my fears, my anxieties, my situation, and you're actually speaking directly to those and planning to alleviate those.
A lot of people are just looking for a trustworthy, partner to work through whatever issue that they have going on, whether it's big or small. And so having the time to set aside for them specifically, having follow-ups. We're in regular communication with our clients all the time. And so just being there, being consistent, I think is a big part of it. But
we went through a period of time where empathy amongst our own culture globally was amazingly present. And so, I think everyone, for the most part, found a way to listen to others, to do kind things for others. And it gives me a lot of hope as we look forward because, the premise of any society, and particularly for the American society, is that we're resilient. And American democracy and its ability economically to produce in a free market society is not something that's going to go away.
I think a lot of people's fears are, this time it's different. We hear that a lot in our industry. This time it's different. And I've been doing this long enough that every time is different and every time is really the same. There's uncertainty prevails, there's crises, there's things happen. We can't control it all, but we can control how we respond.
And for our clients, we help them think that way, long-term and strategic. And we particularly show them what it means for their plan. If I sat in front of a client in 2020 and told them that we would be at all-time highs 5 years later in markets and that their portfolio values would be at all-time highs, they would have all laughed at me. But the reality is it just shows you how resilient the US economy is and how those in that society, that companies can find ways to adapt and win no matter what comes their way. They may not all be there the same way or at all, but there are other industries and other parts of and other sectors in the global economy that will pervade. And that's why you need to work with an advisor that can find them and help your portfolio meet your goals. And that's what we do here at WHC.